You're watching StratNews Global. I'm Parul Chandra, and with me today is the Ambassador of Indonesia to India, Mr. Sidharto Suryodipuro. The ambassador has been in India for about 3 years now, and we're here to talk to him about India-Indonesia ties, about the Indo-Pacific, the Quad, and various other strategic issues. Welcome to StratNews Global, Ambassador Surayadipuro. Pleasure having you talking to us.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me.
Let me begin by asking you, Ambassador, you see the Quad ministerial has met recently in Tokyo, and they have all met for the first time. It's been a standalone meeting. How do you see the meeting of the Quad, and how does Indonesia see the Quad?
Well, first of all, because we are not part of the Quad, so obviously we are not privy to the discussions. But from what we've seen in the media, it is something that is developing. I note that it goes by a vision of Indo-Pacific that is open, free, inclusive, and rules-based. And this is something that Indonesia itself also, it's principles that we also follow in ASEAN also. The ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific. I think the principle of inclusivity is important, and the Quad is we obviously will continue to observe how this will develop, how interactions among the countries and its contribution to the region as a whole, to the stability, security, and prosperity of the region.
Do you see Indonesia becoming a part of the Quad Plus countries? Because you see, there has been an ongoing dialogue since March between Quad countries, as well as you have New Zealand, you have Vietnam, you have South Korea. So do you see anything of that kind happening in the near future?
Well, let me just say that I don't know if the Quad itself, members of the Quad have had this discussion. I know that we've not been approached on it, so it has not entered into our consideration. But at the same time, the Indo-Pacific region is a region that consists of layers of diplomacy. The ASEAN-based architecture is there. It is the most inclusive architecture. It is where all the great powers are included in it, and there are other regional mechanisms in place. In South India, you have the SAARC, you have the BIMSTEC, you have others. In Asia Pacific, we have APEC, and other architecture as well, some even more specific. So while we know that ASEAN and ASEAN-based mechanisms are not the only game in town, but it is the most inclusive, and we believe that it will continue to be a very useful mechanism for everybody, because everybody sits around the table and everybody has something to contribute to the overall good.
Now, the Indo-Pacific construct also talks about the centrality of ASEAN countries. And in fact, recently Germany came out with its own vision of the Indo-Pacific. France came out with it a few months before that. Now, what does Indonesia make of it, given that you are part of the ASEAN? ASEAN has its own outlook of the Indo-Pacific.
For us, the concept of Indo-Pacific also pertains to our own evolution of our own strategic outlook, because Indonesia straddles the Indo-Pacific, the Indian Ocean, Pacific Oceans. So it's also our outlook, and it is also the outlook of ASEAN. So we welcome the support of all the other countries. When we talk about centrality, we are actually talking about at least three interlocking ideas. One is the geographic centrality, one is the institutional centrality, And the third one is the diplomatic centrality. So geographic is the most fundamental of centrality. This is an area where the prosperity and security of many countries would rely on. So it is the basic idea is how to ensure that all countries support the access of every other countries
into this region.
Into this
Yes.
region.
Does it have any, when you said support access, and now, Indonesia, a part of it, in fact, the Sabang port, it sits very close to the Malacca Straits. And now the Malacca Straits are the ones which seem to have become kind of, an area of focus. Given that it's so central to the movement of shipments across the world. So, does Indonesia see itself becoming very, very central to actually this vision now?
Yes. Well, the Malacca Strait, under international law, it's known as a strait used for international navigation. It is not the only strait of such kind in the world, but it is a strait used for international navigation under law of the sea. It is a part of the Straits, Malacca Strait, is actually the territorial waters and the EEZ of Indonesia and Malaysia, and parts of Singapore. However, under international law, it is also where countries would have freedom to navigate through the straits, under normal mode and the most expeditious way, and all of that. This is an understanding, an international agreement that is codified in UNCLOS. It is a balance to reflect a balance between the interest of coastal states and the interest of the user states. So we have to ensure that that very fine, delicate balance when we talk about straits used for international navigation, that we'll continue to support it and continue to strengthen it. And when I say that, we also have to keep an eye on other straits as well. We have to make sure that this law, international law, is supported and strengthened throughout the world, not only in the Malacca Strait, because actions in other parts of the world will also impact on norms and laws in our region.
Now that we're talking about Malacca Straits, now not very far from there, I would say, is of course the North Natuna Sea, and Indonesia has had its own share of troubles with China, where these territorial waters are concerned, and now Indonesia has been asserting its rights on the territorial waters as well as the EEZ in that region. But things don't really seem to be anywhere near resolution. So what is the kind of resolution that Indonesia is looking for on this dispute?
Well, first of all, for us, there is no dispute. And there is no issues when it comes to the territorial waters. Now, on the EEZ, our Chinese friends, they have been saying that there are certain rights coming out of their claims. However, we have yet to hear our Chinese friends formulating the basis in order for us to have clarity what is it exactly that they have. Now, we know that developments in international law, recent and even in the distant past, we have a very strong, the foundation of our boundaries, maritime boundaries, are clear. So for us, we don't see any dispute on that.
My next question is to do again with China, and this is again, it's to do with the South China Sea and the Chinese assertion or aggression in the in the South China Sea. Now, ASEAN countries, of which Indonesia is a member, have been trying to work out a code of conduct for the South China Sea. But that hasn't really happened yet. There have been kind of obstacles to it. So where does this code of conduct stand now? Is it closer to some kind of a text-based document?
Well, I think everybody agrees on the urgency of this, on to have a code of conduct. We are finding ASEAN and our Chinese partners are working to find a way to meet, to have a meeting. Having a virtual meeting might not be as easy as that for technical issues, political issues. I'm hoping that a meeting could take place soon. And especially we know that the urgency because of developments on the grounds, in the waters. And mind you that South China Sea is the place where the physical presence of the great powers are actually makes it very easy for accidents to happen. Frequently the conflagration does not happen out of intention, but out of accidents on the ground, in the waters. So these are issues that we have to be very careful of, and which makes the code of conduct even more urgent. So we hope that this could take place soon. But in the meantime, all countries also have to be cognizant of this fact. We hope that they have established mechanisms that could prevent happening of accidents and such kind of incidents. Now, it not that it has not happened in the past. I think we recall in 2000 or 2001, such kind of incidents taking place. So, we all countries must be very cautious of this.
So are you hinting at a volatile kind of situation in the South China Sea region?
I think the fact that the physical presence of navies make it increasing the situation, also increasing volatility.
Ambassador Surayadipuro, I wanted to also know from you now. Now we come closer to, let's talk about India and Indonesia. Now, India and Indonesia with Australia, we have now a trilateral dialogue in place. And I think, as you mentioned, that it's been a track 1.5 dialogue, but now there's going to be some kind of elevation of this dialogue.
Yes.
To the ministerial level.
Yes, we've had this dialogue 1.5 track already for a number of years. It could have been intensified, and the last one was held, I think, end of 2017 or early 2018 in Sapru House. ICWA hosted it, but it was elevated to senior officials. It has met a few times, and now foreign ministers they have agreed that they should have their own meetings. Now it's a matter of fixing the time and agenda.
Okay. But do we see this again as a dialogue which is again focusing on the Indo-Pacific?
I think it will be a dialogue that will support Indo-Pacific, but it will also be a dialogue in support of issues of the day. I cannot imagine such a dialogue taking place and not discussing COVID-19, for example. Yes. And these are also countries both present in the Indian Ocean. So they will also, I would think, without wanting to proceed the agenda, I cannot pretend that I know what the agenda will be. But, practical issues of common concern in our common region, and discuss also broader issues of common concern.
So it's more of a comprehensive dialogue rather than just a security dialogue, or is that right?
I know it's not going to be exclusive on security. It will be broader than that. um, and issues of the day. COVID-19, sharing of vaccines. I think this could very well be part of the discussion.
Taking you to cooperation between India and Indonesia on the security and defense front, uh, what kind of discussions are ongoing between the two sides?
Well, we have defense cooperation MOU. We have a mechanism to strengthen defense cooperation. We have had coordinated patrols between Andaman and Sabang already more than 15 years. Last year we had a naval exercise in Visakhapatnam. We've been talking about Air Force exercise, but that's now on hold. Also, the Army to Army exercise, we have to postpone that.
Both because of COVID?
Yeah, because of COVID. COVID has...
Yes, it's brought the world to a standstill. Yes, that's right. You mentioned Sabang Port, and the port has been developed with Indian assistance, and connecting Sabang Port to Port Blair in the Andamans is an important project involving both the countries. Where does this port stand in terms of its use between the two countries for transportation?
Well, our thinking is connecting basically these two bordering ports on our borders.
Yes, what is the distance between the two? You mentioned that it's about...
So Sabang to the southern point of Nicobar Islands is about 90 nautical miles. That's over 100 kilometers. And between Sabang to Port Blair is between 4 to 500 kilometers. So the potential is great. Port Blair could be a gateway for trade, because once you get to Port Blair, then you have ships going to Kolkata, to Chennai, and then they get air connectivity throughout India. So the potential is there. Now we need to accelerate the work. We have the chambers of commerce connected. They are in discussions. We have discussions about how the Indonesian side could provide construction materials for Andaman Nicobar, because I know that the Indian government has a lot of vision to develop those islands. So we have a joint working group for this effort.
On the Sabang port?
To connect Sabang and Andaman.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is at the official level, right?
Yes.
So is the port or the development of this port meant only for trading purposes, or do we see a strategic use of this port?
The Sabang port?
Yes.
I think when you talk about strategic level, it will only make sense if it's broad-based. It cannot be only military. It has to be strong-based. It has to be durable and sustainable. So in that sense, business, trade, people to people become a central element. That's what you have to build. Now, when you talk about the security side, obviously we there's shared interest. This is a very strategic area. Our political leaders are keen on developing cooperation on the strategic side between Sabang and this whole region, even throughout the Bay of Bengal. Even from our perspective, this is where the focus of our cooperation should be. Not on the Malacca Strait, because Malacca Strait, as I said earlier, the mechanism, the norms, and the legal side, everything is in place. It's not an area that we can have any kind of practical cooperation.
Yes, but Sabang is there waiting. So,
but Sabang and
So does it mean that in the future we could see Indian naval ships also making visits to Sabang?
Well, the Sabang port will be open to all Navy ships as a port of supply. It's not going to be only Indian Navy ships, just like other ports of Indonesia that has been open for such purpose. So it could be any ships, but of course the Indian Navy would be the closest. So one interesting point about India and Indonesia is that we both share the same outlook in that we don't have any foreign military alliances, no military alliances, and no foreign military bases. This is something that we share, and I believe something that both of us will strengthen as norms of the Indo-Pacific region into the future.
Ambassador, now coming to the issue of trade between India and ASEAN countries, which again, because Indonesia is a part of the ASEAN, now RCEP has fallen through, and it's been a matter of concern for ASEAN countries. What next for India and ASEAN in terms of trade? What is the road ahead now?
On the ASEAN side, of course, we continue to wish that India will join. We understand that India may not be ready this year. And especially with COVID, a lot of things are put on hold or are being recalculated. We have to look again. But RCEP countries, except India, we look forward to signing RCEP this year. We hope that India will join at a later stage. Of course, situation now becomes more uncertain. All of us are looking at our economic development. But India, I'm quite positive that in the quite soon the economy will pick up. It will accelerate. At which point a mechanism, free trade mechanism like RCEP, will also be useful for India. Now, mind you that RCEP is an ASEAN mechanism, not any other countries, but it's an ASEAN to bring all trading partners together. So that's the main idea, and I'm quite optimistic that India will join sometime down the road.
Okay, so let's that's a very positive note.
You see, for India to we are very supportive of India's vision and ambition of reaching a $5 trillion economy. To get to that level in an accelerated manner, it needs market. India itself is a very huge market. But remember, ASEAN is a market of 650 million people. It needs that market. It needs that competition. And it needs investment. So, these mechanisms will be most useful for not only for ASEAN countries, but also for India.
My final question to you, Ambassador, and this is on India-Indonesian ties broadly. We are so close geographically. We have historical, cultural links, and yet ties have really picked up, one would say, some kind of pace only in recent years. Why is that so? And you've been here now for 3 years. So what kind of changes have you seen taking place in these 3 years in bilateral relations?
Well, I think we've seen trade going up, not as fast as all of us would have liked, and diversified, not only in quantity but also in quality. Connectivity is one issue. We don't have direct shippings. We've been talking about it. We've had plans for this year, but I think now it will be postponed to next year to develop plans for direct shippings, direct flights. We need really to expand this connectivity. We need to expand people to people, not only in terms of tourism, but also in terms of students, I'd like to see more Indonesian students coming to Indian Institutes of Technologies, the Indian Institutes of Management, medical school. I'd like to see them network at an early age, at that level, at that very pliable level, to establish that network, a network of alumni. It's going to take us a long way. In the past, because this is a historical, traditional relationship, in the past, even education was one important component. So, during the time of Nalanda and Sriwijaya, education was a very strong connection between India and the Indonesian islands.
And then what happened? Why did it kind of just taper down and
Well, you see,
such?
For a few centuries, our relationship was disrupted by colonialism. I don't mean to lament on colonialism. It's already many decades behind us. But what's happening, you see, is that the further we move away from colonialism, the more we look back to our ties before colonialism. Because that's where we can find ideas and imagination of what this relationship could be and should be.
Ambassador Surayadipuro, one question that this is in connection with Sabang again, was that you mentioned connectivity. Now, Sabang and Port Blair is again connectivity between the two countries, maritime connectivity. So, one ship did a trial run.
Yes.
Have there been any more of these forays or nothing since then?
Unfortunately, no. So it's not taking place as fast, as intensive as we'd like to see. The result of that visit was the ship brought some exhibitionary goods, and the business communities on both sides have started their discussions. But that have slowed down. So right after the pandemic is behind us, this is something that we have to accelerate.
On that note, thank you so much, Ambassador Surayadipuro, for talking to StratNews Global and sharing your insights.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Parul, and thank you to StratNews. Thank you.